Hello there, and welcome to Reach for Power, where we take a closer look at the power itself and the strategies to build it. I am your host, Monika Kruk, and in this episode, we will focus on building your own story, also known as personal branding. Consider your personal brand as your business card. What your friends and connections should have top of mind when somebody asks them about you. What would be those 5 to 10 sentences of professional story that would showcase all your skills, competencies, experience, affiliations, and personal qualities? The key element here is to define which dimensions of your personal narrative you want to highlight. However brutal it might sound from the perspective of job market or competitive market overall if we are a solopreneur or entrepreneur, we are effectively a product. And like any product of which we want to make our audience aware of and effectively sell, we need to have a certain story to back us up. So the question would be, what would you want your audience to know about you? If you had to choose the just 2, 3 key messages, what would those messages be? On the other hand, what elements of your existing narrative are no longer relevant, and which capabilities, affiliations, resources, or unique features you would like to highlight? Which ones would be key for your personal development in 5, 10, or 15 years from now? One very important watch out here. Keep in mind that your personal brand should not be equal to your company's brand, even if you are an entrepreneur. It is more in the direction of what comes to mind when I think about myself as a person, not me as an employee or part of an organization. Why it is important? Let me give you a very specific example. In my coaching practice, I work with individuals who were recently among the ones laid off from major technological companies. The bitter realization that they come to in the course of our work is that after their business title is gone and their business affiliations are gone with the given company, there is effectively very little left to build their personal branding upon. Why? Because they focused on delivering great job for their current company and somehow missed the part of answering a key question: what will be left for me at the end of this journey? For me as a person, for me as a brand, for me as a product. Hopefully by now you see the importance of having this personal story ready. Let me offer you some hints what might actually land in that story as the building blocks. Your unique qualities, your academic background, your professional experiences, other prominent affiliations, any major achievements or awards, broadly known brands, household names, or celebrity connections, maybe your unique skills or capabilities. Additional important point to mention is that keep in mind not to make it an overblown PowerPoint to rely on. You should be able to have a spoken pitch at any point of time with no visual aids apart from your own energetic and well-rehearsed delivery that you should effectively practice for exactly such occasions as networking, presenting yourself during an interview, or simply getting introduced. Some further ideas to consider on your way to personal branding and approaching it in the way that any other brand will be built, although also in fast-moving consumer goods or in technology. First and foremost, think about your identity, what your brand is all about. What characteristics do you want to showcase? What is your X factor? What value can you bring to others? What you have, what nobody else has? Secondly, your image. How are you presenting yourself? What photos or graphics do you use in your presentation? Are you consistent in your graphical identity? Are you leveraging similar elements across your different social media profiles or presentations or any other materials that you share with others? Point number 3, audience. Have you identified who your core audience actually is? Where can you find members of this group? What is the easiest or more effective, most efficient way to get in touch with them? Another point, reach. How active you are across different platforms and communication channels. Have you tried working with your brand across different communities, groups, or environments? Or maybe you have committed a mortal sin of sticking just to one platform, one group, or one community? Point number 5, I think, content. How versatile are you in your contributions? Are you commenting posts, presenting some personal blog, maybe a personal website? Are you publishing articles, podcasts, or webinars? Or you are just copy pasting some other people's content? Last but definitely not least, your allies. Who can help you in supporting your brand? Who could be your ambassador or ally to sing your praises to others? Another point which often surfaces in my coaching work is the question, Monica, fair enough, I hear you. I need to have my own story, but then how exactly to make sure that it stays relevant across different audiences? And this is actually a brilliant question. The answer to it is relatively simple. Although you should have certain core backbone of your story, which consists of the key facts about your professional, educational, personal development, there might be also additional highlights which can be used on a need to or want to basis. What I mean is that if you would go to a given audience, you might choose certain aspects or certain elements of your personal story that you put more highlight on, that you accentuate. But you might also choose simply not to mention certain elements which do not fit the particular context. Example, I can promise you that if I asked you to tell your personal story in terms of your professional development to a class of 6 years olds, you will choose completely different anecdotes, completely different words, and probably completely different way of telling about what you do day to day versus when I ask you to go with the same presentation or with the same general topic of presenting yourself to your peers. Why? Because you would assume that your peers know exactly what you do, what sort of content your role entails, and therefore you would focus on accentuating your specific achievements or your awards or your areas of interest. Although the story effectively is the same because it's still about you, you are adjusting the exact content of it depending on what your audience wants to hear. And yet another element to keep in mind is, although of course it's your personal story, so by default it is about you, when telling it, keep in mind what is in it for the listener. What sort of elements might actually come as a point of reference or interesting entry to a next discussion with the person that you are interacting with? You can bore somebody to death even if your resume is extremely impressive by just spending too much time talking about yourself. But if you intertwine certain information or certain achievements or certain interests the other person will find in common with you, that might be actually a beginning of a beautiful friendship. And the higher also the chances that the person will actually listen with interest and with attention to what you have to say, and therefore will actually absorb what sort of information effectively you want to share about your personal brand. Last but definitely not least, you might think that if you work in a corporate world, the whole episode of podcast entitled Personal Story does not concern you because at the end of the day, you are in the hierarchy of given organization and certain things like promotion and whatnot will happen one way or the other, even if it takes some time. Wrong. Why? For a very simple reason. The further you go in the organization, the higher and bitter the competition becomes. And if you do not take care of your personal branding, if you are not making sure that people in power know exactly what value you bring to the company, and what you can offer more to the company, therefore building your personal brand, the higher the chances that somebody who did this homework will be promoted ahead of you. For a very good reason, out of sight, out of mind. If those in power do not know what you stand for, do not recognize your awards and your contributions, not because they are not interested, because they are simply not aware or do not have enough time to pay that much attention, then you are at a loss. It's almost like with this old saying, if a tree falls in a forest and there is no TV to report it, whether it really fell or not. Think about that metaphor in terms of your own career. Are you sure you are making enough splash for everybody who is making choices about your future to hear? And with that thought, let me thank you for joining me for today's episode. Please subscribe to have regular access to the newly published content. And if you would like to work with me on your personal branding, please check Reach for Power webpage at reachforpower.com for contact information. Thank you for joining me today and keep on reaching for power.